So the Sicha of Matos Aleph, Chelik Yud Gimel, beautiful Sicha, easy, straightforward. So I'm going to try to pretty much follow the theme of the Sicha in its regular order. It's a Sicha from Tafshin Chavav, 1966. And the Rebbe starts with a question. He says that the derech of Rashi's method is to explain anything that's difficult and stands out in Pshuti Shel Mikra, in the simple, straightforward reading of the text of the Torah. And whenever something Rashi chooses not to explain, that means that Rashi expects us to figure it out on ourselves based on things he said previously, or just even without anything he said, just by a simple, straightforward reading of the text. So question the Rebbe asks based on that, which is a very interesting question. Basically, like, you actually start digging up questions and you ask yourself, why didn't Rashi ask them? It's instead of questioning Rashi, you're questioning why Rashi didn't ask. So the question he asks is, at the beginning of Parshas Matos, we talk about Nedarim, the things vows that people make, and it goes into various different details of who made them, the wife, the daughter, etc. Says the pasuk, Eila chukim asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. These are the chukim that Hashem commanded Moshe ben ish leishtoi, between husband and wife, ben av labita, between father and daughter, ben urer while she's still young, beis avia, in her father's home. So the question is, if this pasuk is there to make a sikum, to make a sachakel, a final short summary of everything we spoke about, why are you only mentioning the father, daughter, and husband, wife? Why don't you mention the fundamental thing that we started with the beginning, the first thing? Ish ki yidar neder, a person who makes a vow has to keep his vow. Then, only then, do we go into the details of husband, wife, mother, father, daughter. And even though the pasuk starts with the words chukim, and the word chukim includes things that are illogical, in other words, not illogical, but beyond logic, and the fact the person has to keep their promise, maybe you would say, is more logical. So then the question is, hagufa, why? Why does the Torah, when it makes a summary, only include the chukim element within this mitzvah, that a husband could do it for the wife and that a father could do it for the daughter, and not the straightforward elements that maybe even make sense? So the Rebbe says, it's obvious that the idea that somebody has to keep their vow is not needed for Parshas Matos. In other words, Parshas Matos didn't come to teach us that. Logic. We already said Midvar Sheker Tirchak. We already saw that Yaakov made a promise that if he comes back from Haran, this stone is going to be a house for God, and he keeps it. And Hashem then tells him, you made a promise and you're going to keep it. But over there, Rashi says, on the words, Nadartali Neder, says Rashi, V'tzarech, you have to fulfill your vow. And therefore, there's many times in Torah that we find that there's a mention of vow, and the pasuk doesn't have to tell you that you have to keep it. It's obvious. Ishki afli neder be'ergecha, if a person wants to give their own monetary value in Parshas B'chukoisai, we just say how much you have to give based on your age and gender, etc. But we don't say you have to keep your vow. That's obvious. We're just saying the number. And Nazir, etc. And also when we see in Parshas Chukas, just before Parshas Matos, we see that the Jewish people said that if they're able to take over certain cities, V'achramti Yisarei, I'll dedicate their cities towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They also did that. So must be that when the Torah is coming to say Ish ki yidar neder, starting off the topic, it's not to tell us that person has to keep a neder. It's just a conversation opener. It's saying, listen, let's talk about neder. The basic premise, obviously, you know already, you have to keep your neder, but that's not what I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you about the unique details of husband, wife, father, daughter. So Rashi doesn't have to explain, when it comes to the summary, why we're not mentioning the summary of the idea that a person has to keep the vow. Because again, that was just a interlude into the main sugya, the main topic that Parshas Matos, the first aliyah, came to tell us, and that is regarding certain dynamics within vows, not the basic principle that somebody has to keep their vow. Okay. Now, says the Rebbe, we could understand according to this the idea that Rashi Matos, what's the name of the parasha? Matos. Hashem spoke to the heads of the tribes, and comes Rashi and says why the head of the tribes. Chilek kavel nasiim. Hashem gave over honor to the nasiim, to the heads of the tribes, lanam tchila, to teach them first. And why did the Torah, and why did Hashem choose to honor them specifically in this case of vows? To teach you that for the Rashi Hamatis, in other words, for somebody that's a higher level, a Yachid Mumcha, a single individual who's a professional, they could annul a vow alone. But if there's not one single individual who's a mumcha, then you could use 3 regular folks. Now, what's the connection to this idea that why are we bringing this idea specifically with Rashi Hamatos, and why are we bringing it specifically in negating Nedarim? In other words, like the big chiddush of the big insight of a leader, Yachid Mumcha, is he could negate and take away somebody else's neder. So we could understand, because this whole Torah is here to teach you the idea of husband, wife, and children, etc. And the chiddush is that the husband or father can remove the vow. Comes the Torah. So when the Torah is telling you al Rashi Matos, it can't be that it's just a basic idea about vows, because the whole topic is not about vows. The whole topic is about annulling vows. And therefore, if the whole topic is about annulling vows, the connection to the Rashi Matos is supposed to be about annulling vows. Now, if I could bring in my own thoughts, and it's coming to tell you how powerful these individuals are, that just like a husband or a father can do it, these leaders, as a Yachid Mumcha, literally reaches a status that a single individual could be made for a neder, just like the husband or father. But the point is that the Rebbe's question was, why does Rashi know that Rashi Hamatos has something to do with Afaras neder, with removing the neder? Maybe that's to do with just the concept of neder in general. Because the whole topic over here is not about keeping your vow, the whole topic is about removing a vow, and that was just an introduction. Now, as the Rebbe says, it's according to Chassidus. There's a famous Yerushalmi in the Durham that says, it's not enough for you what Torah prohibited, but even more so, you're looking to add on. In other words, why are you making more prohibitions on yourself? And that's one of the reasons why we punish a Nazir, because it's not enough that Hashem told you what you can't eat chazir, you can't eat this, you have to take on more Yisurim. What's the issue? The issue is according to Chassidus, because the Eibishter's intention is that we make dir b'tachtonim. In order to make a dir b'tachtonim, you have to work with the tachtonim. If you're suddenly disavowing every single part of tachtonim, then you can't actually make a dir. On the other hand, Chazal tell us nedarim siyag leplishus, that when you take a vow, that leads to plishus, which in other words, a spiritual elevation that takes you and separates you from physicality and mundane, and it seems like a compliment. So is neder a good thing, or neder not a good thing? And the explanation is given. The Rebbe says in the Sicha Chelik Dalit that the difference is where a person is at in their life. If a person is on a good path, Teva Yasha, then Torah says, then why are you negating things? Work with things. However, when a person is not exactly in a great state, and there's a worry that the Dvar Magashmim can cause a Yirida, over there we say Nedarim Segel Precious. And a simple example, I'm talking to you through technology right now. And technology is a perfect example where a person is in life. What age they are, what stage they are, what protections they have, what impulses they have. It's a very personalized and individual decision, how much technology, if technology, etc., based on where a person is. So making a basic principle that you should use it, you shouldn't use it, never is going to work. A person has to know where they are, be true to themselves, and then build a system that they can utilize the Eibishter's world for the best based on where they're at. So obviously, the ultimate is to reach a level that you don't have to make a neder. But when somebody is on a lower level, then they have to make a neder. So when the Torah is telling us that there is something that has to do with a Yachid Mumcha or 3 regular people because they're high level, in other words, it's a compliment to the Nasiim, it's telling you it's not something about making Nedarim. It's about removing Nedarim, because making Nedarim is not a high level. Removing Nedarim, in other words, working with the world. So this answers the question that we referred to earlier, that maybe the Nigla answer didn't explain so much, and that is, why are we connecting the Nasiim to something so simple like removing a neder? Because on the contrary, removing a neder is the higher level. If you're a Yachid Mumcha, then you're at the space where you could already work with the world, and therefore you remove the vow that holds you back from this world. Now we could understand also why this whole story of Rashi Matos is right before the Yidden come into Eretz Yisrael, pretty much Matos Masay, and then is Chumash Dvarim, which is Moshe Rabbeinu's last speech. This is one of the last mitzvahs that Kadosh Baruch Hu commands Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Yidden before his Chumash Dvarim, and then the Jewish people go into the desert. This is mamash a few weeks before they go into Eretz Yisrael. The main difference between Avodas Bnei Yisrael and Midbar to the way they were in Eretz Yisrael, then the Midbar, they were not busy with Gashmis, the famous Nakuda, that's why the Meraglim wanted to stay there, etc. They got man min hashamayim, and they drank water from the well of Miriam. They didn't have to change their clothes because their clothes grew with them. But when you go there to Yisrael, life starts. And that is Tachlis HaKavana, that's the intention, So therefore, when they were about to go to Eretz Yisrael and get themselves busy with this Avodah, the Eibishter talks to them about Hafadas Nedarim, which means you're going into a world where you have to work with the world. So don't look for more prohibitions. My goal is that you go with a perspective that you should reach a level that you shouldn't be constantly negating this world, but work with this world, which is a basic principle of the Baal Shem Tov, Azav Tazavimai, work with this world. However, says the Rebbe in the final laws, because the fact is that there is the idea of Nedarim, that a person has to keep them, etc., and it was spoken about in the beginning of the Parsha, Ishki Yeder Neder, even though that's not the main topic, but it was mentioned just before the Yidden go into Eretz Yisrael. There must be that there's a lesson in there as well. What is a neder? The Torah tells us lo yachel dvarei, which means lo yasel dvarav chulin. Don't cheapen your words. Your words have to have value. That even your simple words should not be chulin, they should be of value. And this hayda is the idea that when you make a neder, take your words seriously, this idea that your words, that what you do with this world, nothing should be chulin, everything should be kedusha. So every single one of us has this level, even for somebody who's not ready to remove neder. They're in the stage where they should be taking on neder, in other words, to create boundaries for themselves. The Torah is telling us that make sure that your life is not chulin, but rather a world of kedusha. Bein ish le'ishtei, bein av le'bitei. So finishes off the Rebbe. We are the wife of the Eibishter, and we are the daughter of the Eibishter. And the Rebbe says over there, he brings from Shir Hashirim Rabba, that over there, that in Shir Hashirim Rabba, it's proven that even when there's no love at the level of wife or sister, there's still the love of daughter. And when Bein Ish Le'ishtei, that neder that we make to keep our words kedusha, to make our world kedusha, that causes HaKadosh Baruch Hu to make a dir b'tachtonim and help us do our avodah to make a dir b'tachtonim and make this place a better place. And v'yidatzin, it should happen, take it from Miyad Mamish.